Somewhere in the world right now, a girl is finding out for the first time that her body just changed. In one house, that discovery gets met with a party, a special meal, gifts, her whole community celebrating. In another house, not far away on the map, that same discovery means she has to leave. Same biological event, same age, completely different fate, decided entirely by which side of a border she happened to be born on. If you're a woman, you have a version of this story yourself, whether it involved a celebration, an awkward silence, or nothing said at all. If you're not, you've still absorbed some version of what this moment is supposed to mean, whether anyone ever explained why. Almost nobody actually chose that meaning. It was simply already waiting for you. You would assume shame around this is just how it's always been, everywhere, some universal human instinct to treat it as something dirty. It isn't. And the actual range of how cultures have handled this single, identical biological moment is stranger and in some places darker than almost anything else in human history. Start with the version that treats it as power. In ancient Rome, the writer Pliny the Elder documented completely seriously that menstrual blood could ward off hailstorms, dull the edge of a sword, and drive dogs into a frenzy just by a woman's presence. That's not disgust, that's fear, built on awe, the same reaction you'd have towards something you believed was genuinely magic. You'd think that's just one strange Roman idea, an outlier. It isn't. Ancient Egyptian texts independently describe the same event as a form of purification, something used in medicinal remedies. Among the Krobo people of Ghana, a girl's first period still triggers the Dipo ceremony today, an elaborate celebration with beads, feasting, and public recognition of her new status. In Japan, Shinto tradition paired the idea of temporary ritual impurity with something more generous, marking a girl's first period with red rice. Sekihan, a dish specifically reserved for celebrations. Cultures with no contact with each other, centuries apart, kept landing on some version of the same conclusion. So somewhere along the way, humans clearly had the option to treat this as a source of status. Imagine growing up inside that version where the first sign of your body changing was treated as news worth celebrating rather than something to whisper about or hide. Your entire relationship with your own body would start from a completely different place. You'd think that settles it then. Humanity's real, deeper instinct toward this must be reverence, and the shame you've seen elsewhere must be the outlier. It's not that simple either. Among the Kung people of the Kalahari Desert, anthropologists found something even stranger. Women held near equal social standing to men, sharing decision-making and labor, and their first periods were treated with open celebration rather than fear. The hut where a girl stayed during her first period wasn't hidden at the edge of the village. It was built inside it, and men were welcome to watch the celebration happen. The difference wasn't the biology, and it wasn't even really the ritual. It was how much power women already held in that society before the ritual ever started, which makes the other version even harder to explain away as some ancient default we've simply outgrown. In Nepal, a centuries-old tradition called Chaupadi does the opposite. Menstruating women and girls are considered untouchable, barred from touching food, religious objects, even the family cattle, and sent to sleep alone in a small outdoor shed until it passes. Nepal's Supreme Court outlawed the practice back in 2005. It is still happening. In January 2019, a 21-year-old woman named Parbati Bogati was found dead in one of these huts, having lit a fire to survive the cold and suffocated in the smoke of a windowless room. Weeks earlier, a mother named Amba Bohara and her 2 young sons died the exact same way, huddled together for warmth in a shed she'd been banished to. These aren't stories from centuries ago. These are headlines from the last several years. So the same biological event that got a girl a feast and public honor in one culture got another girl killed by her own family's fear in the same rough era, sometimes in the same decade. That gap can't be explained by the biology because the biology never changed. Something else was doing all the work. Here's what that something is. The body did the exact same thing in every single case, everywhere, in every century. What changed was entirely the story a given culture decided to attach to it, and, as the Ot Kung show, how much power the people going through it already held before anyone wrote the story down. Sacred versus unclean. Powerful versus dangerous. Worth celebrating versus worth hiding. None of those labels came from the blood itself. They came from people deciding collectively what an unfamiliar biological fact was allowed to mean, and then treating that decision as if it had always been true, as if it were nature instead of invention. Once a story like that takes hold, it stops needing to defend itself. Nobody in a village practicing Chowpatty today is running a fresh cost-benefit analysis on whether menstruating women are actually dangerous. The verdict arrived generations ago, got repeated enough times to feel self-evident, and now simply gets enforced. The same way nobody in ancient Rome fact-checked whether a woman's presence could really dull a sword. The story didn't need to be true. It only needed to be old enough to stop sounding like a choice, which says something uncomfortable about how you live too. You assume plenty of your own reactions come from something solid, something biological, or obviously correct. Disgust at certain foods, instinctive judgment about a stranger's appearance, a gut feeling that some ordinary bodily fact is shameful and best kept hidden. Very little of that is as fixed as it feels from the inside. Much of it is a story you inherited so early and so completely that it stopped feeling like a story at all and started feeling like the truth. You didn't choose most of what your own body means to you either. Someone handed you that meaning before you were old enough to question it, the same way it was handed to every girl in every one of these places. And you've probably been carrying pieces of it ever since, without ever tracing it back to where it actually came from. Try to find the actual source of even one of your own quiet certainties about your body, and there's a decent chance you'll come up empty. Not because there's no answer, but because the story arrived so early. It never had to introduce itself. A girl's body, doing exactly what every female body in human history has done, shouldn't be able to end in a party in one place and a death certificate in another. The fact that it can tells you the danger was never really in the blood. It was in whichever story got there first, took root, and started calling itself common sense.